Hey, welcome in. My name's Jason Priester, allclemsontigers.com. Back here with you again on this Monday night for another edition of Monday Live. We do it every Monday, 7 o'clock. And tonight is no different. No shortage of topics to talk about. Clemson's tournament run comes to an end in the Elite Eight. Spring game this Saturday. Baseball still plugging right along up to number 2 in the D1 baseball poll this week. We can do some recruiting, whatever you want to do. Got a recruiting story that I'm going to break on the site in the morning about the spring game this weekend. So whatever you want to talk about, we can talk about. I'm going to start with basketball. Just an amazing journey that team took this fan base on, over the past 2 weeks, man. Just after that drubbing they took from Boston College in the ACC tournament, man, this team was just left for dead. It was kind of easy to forget that they have played. They played pretty well against Wake Forest in the regular season finale, despite losing. They played pretty well. They just got beat that night, and again, kind of left for dead going into the NCAA tournament. Everybody picking against them against New Mexico, and they just controlled that game from the onset. Same thing against Baylor. Nobody hardly gave them a shot. Controlled it from the onset. Then they beat Arizona in the Sweet 16, and a lot of that due to some pretty outstanding coaching, in my opinion. And I thought it continued on into the Alabama game. Sometimes you just get beat, man, and it was Alabama's night. They just got hot from 3-point range. It didn't matter what Clemson tried to do defensively. They even went and tried some zone there in the second half, and nothing worked. Sometimes nothing works, man. But I think it is a testament to that team that they had a shot to pull within 3 with under a minute to go, and with Alabama having played so well, shooting so hot from beyond the arc. And Clemson missed going 3 for 11 from the free throw line in the second half. Top 10 team nationally coming into the tournament in free throw percentage. And that's going to be what stands out to me, not hitting their free throws. That area they've just been so good at for most of the year. Just still hard to believe Jack Clark missed those 2 free throws there with 30-something seconds left. That would have pulled them to within 3. It just is what it is. Again, sometimes you just get beat, and you got to tip your cap. Alabama played outstanding. Thought they were using penetration to get some open looks beyond the arc, particularly in the corner. And then when Clemson adjusted, I thought they started using some, they used the screen game really well. And then even when Clemson went to a zone, man, there was a couple of times where they were, just out of position or late getting over, late would help. And, I thought that was one heck of a basketball game. I thought both coaches did an outstanding job. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, and I think Brad Brownell, just kind of, I think he did enough to silence most of his critics. That's a Sweet 16 appearance, an Elite 8 appearance, all since the renovation, since to Little John. 3 tournament appearances, should be 4. They've won 43 games in the past 2 years. He's earned the extension that he's going to get, and he's going to get one. Spring game, Saturday. What you looking for in the spring game? I'm always of the opinion there's not a whole lot to be gleaned from these things. There might be an individual performance here or there that, he's, wow, man, that guy looks like he can help this year. That guy looks like he can help this year. But, if the offense is going to be terrible again, you're probably going to see some signs of it on Saturday. The Clemson spring games have been very vanilla the past few years. I don't see that changing. You just don't want to put a whole lot on film. The returns from the spring, though, have been promising, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. You got to like some of the things you heard. And I'm not just talking about the coach speak stuff you get from coaches and stuff. There have been recruits who have visited throughout the spring, and not just the ones that I talked to. I've seen them in some other interviews that have reaped high praise on what they've seen from the offense and the practices they've been at. And then some of the stuff some of the players are saying. You got to like some of the things. I was encouraged by what Garrett Riley said when we got to talk to him last week. So it looks like you're trending in the right direction. The question is, for me at least anyways, because Clemson's offense was so bad last year. It was so discombobulated, so bad. Can you make that much of a leap in just one season? Because they need to take a big jump if they're going to compete at the highest level. And that's the question for me. Can they take that kind of a leap in just 1 year? A lot of it will hinge on how they play up front, and then, of course, the growth of the quarterback and probably those freshman wide receivers. How are they gonna help you? That if you get the cohesiveness and the improvement up front, and you get the improvement from Cade Klubnik, he takes that next step, and those two receivers come in and help. I think the ceiling's pretty high, but that's a lot of things that need to happen. Not saying I don't think Clemson's offense is going to be better, because I do. I absolutely do 100%. But to me, it's a question of, can they be that much better? And, from 1 year to the next. Baseball takes 2 out of 3 from Miami. Man, that guy that pitched for Miami Friday night, he was lights out. He got my vote for ACC Pitcher of the Week today. I don't know if those have been announced yet. I've not been around this afternoon, but man, he was good. Aiden Knock was outstanding again on Saturday for Clemson. It's 2 consecutive road starts where he has just been dominant. Career high in innings, career high in strikeouts. He just keeps getting better week after week after week after week. The 3-game road trip at Notre Dame this weekend. Got a midweek matchup, neutral site matchup against USC Upstate tomorrow there at Floor Field. Only going to be televised on ESPN Plus, last I seen. I don't know. I doubt that's going to change the way the last one that wasn't supposed to be televised changed. But if you got ESPN Plus, you'll be able to watch it. And then the 3 games up there this weekend, I think they're all 3 on ACC Network Extra. We'll see if. Do not expect Tristan Smith back this week. I know he made it sound possible last time when he originally talked about Tristan's injury, but I'll be very surprised if he's back as fast. Probably get the same rotation: Matt Marshall, Ethan Darden, and Knock. I actually kind of like the move of moving Gordon to the pen because he's not there yet, man. And I think that outing Saturday, whatever day it was, in game 2, I think it was, which would have been Friday. I think that outing is going to benefit him tremendously, because he was a guy that, we've talked about it a bunch of times. He was behind some of the other pitchers when it comes to getting stretched out, because they shut him down late last year after fall ball, so he had to catch up with everybody else. And so far in his starts this year, he just hasn't quite looked like the same guy from last year. I thought he looked like that guy over the weekend, and nobody's kind of really cemented themselves as the closer on this team. I think that's a role that he could probably fill and probably be pretty good at. He's got really good stuff. He's got closer stuff. His fastball's got really good movement on it. You know, sometimes when he makes a mistake, he tends to leave the ball up high in the zone and it gets put in the stands in the outfield. But if you're using him as the closer, you know, those opportunities are going to be fewer and far between because he's not going to be pitching as many innings. That's what I'm trying to get at. So I kind of like the idea of Gordon in the closer's role, especially if he's going to pitch the way he did over the weekend. And again, nobody's kind of really cemented themselves as the closer on this team. Reed Garrett started the season hurt, so he's kind of been limited over the first few weeks. Rob Hughes has kind of been used in that role some, and you know he's been pretty dang good this year outside of giving up the walk-off home run the other night. It never hurts to have a couple of guys you can depend on to close games for you. Up to number 2 this week in the D1 baseball poll, Oregon State lost both games they played over the weekend to Southern Cal. Their third game was rained out, so kind of fully expected Clemson to move up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got the spring game going on this weekend. So tell me what some of you guys are looking for in the spring game. I'm kind of ready to lay eyes on Bryant Wesco. For me, he's one of the biggest storylines on Saturday, for me anyways. Clemson's offense has lacked explosiveness. They've not been able to push the ball down the field. They've kind of had to dink it and dunk it and depend on those, 10, 11, 12 play drives because they haven't been able to pick up the chunk. They haven't been able to pick up the chunk plays. And I think he's going to help tremendously in that regard. I think TJ Moore will too once he gets here in the summer. But no, and I'm ready to see Cade Klubnik and see where he is because I don't think anybody would disagree with me saying he needs to be better this year. Does he need to go out and throw for 300 yards in the spring game? No. It's more about comfort level for me. That's what I want. That's what I want to see. I want to see. It's hard to. It's one of those things you'll know it when you see it. You want to see him at the comfort level that you kind of expected from him last year in this offense, and I don't think he ever was really that last year. And by all accounts, it sounds like he's kind of settled in nicely this spring. I've heard the word comfort used a lot or comfortable used several times over the past few weeks when guys have talked about him. And the more comfortable he is, the better he's going to be. But what are you guys looking for? No. Not, but I like to do as many road trips for baseball as I can. Like I went to Duke a couple of weeks ago, and I'll probably go to Winston-Salem when they play there. I'm at Coastal when they play there. If they play a neutral site game in Charlotte, I'm there. Of course, I'm at the ACC tournament, but I'm a diehard baseball guy. But man, there's no justification really in sending somebody that far away because you're gonna lose money. There's just not enough money to be made in baseball, and it was kind of a decision we had to make with basketball too. When they were going out to California to play in the Sweet 16 round and then the Elite 8 round, could we justify the cost? I know the narratives out there that we didn't think it was important enough. That really didn't play into it at all. It was more about being cost effective. It just sometimes you just can't make the numbers work, man. I wish I could. I wish I could go to Notre Dame and stay up there all weekend, but you'd find yourself in the red awful fast when you start doing those kind of things. Got to be smart about it. Which incoming basketball freshman for next year are you looking forward to seeing the most? That one's kind of hard. Let's see. Obviously you got Ace Buckner coming in, the son of Greg Buckner. He's a top 150 guy. And if Chase Hunter leaves, it's going to, open up. Clemson's going to be looking for a new point guard. And Buckner's listed as a combo guard. I don't know how much point he's played. Obviously, he might be a guy that needs a year, though. Dallas Thomas, he's kind of the stretch. He's a top 150 guy. 6'7". I think it's 170, 175 pounds. I think Buckner's less than 170 pounds. So we're talking about guys that are going to need some time in the weight room. And Dale Jones, who plays a lot of point guard in high school, is another. He's a fringe top 150 guy. I'm not sure what his weight is. I'm kind of interested to see the kid that redshirted this year, that transferred in from Air Force. I think he's 6'5". He's long. He's athletic. He can shoot the ball. He's a pretty good ball handler, if I'm remembering right. One of the biggest things for Clemson might be whether or not Chase Hunter comes back, and I think there's a possibility that he does. I do think they're going to lose 2-3 guys to the portal, but not Chase Hunter. Obviously, he's got to decide whether he wants to use his last year of eligibility or decide to go pro, which would probably mean going and playing in Europe. And being honest, he could probably stay here another year and make about the same money he would playing in Europe. So he's going to have a decision to make. Obviously, if he comes back, that probably means his brother Dylan's coming back, who I think is going to have a big-time expanded role next year, assuming he doesn't unexpectedly leave for whatever reason. He's been really good on the defensive end. I'm also excited to see R.J. Godfrey in an expanded role next year. A year older, a year smarter, or a year stronger. I think he can have a big season beside Ian Shefflin. Fully expect Clemson to bring in a big body from the portal and at least one guard from the portal, maybe even more. Depends on what they're going to lose. But if we're strictly talking those freshmen, I'm not sure any of them come in here and start day one. It's hard to start for Brownell as a true freshman. He asked a lot of those guys, and I honestly don't know where they are weight wise. Again, the weights I'm going by are what's listed on their recruiting profiles, which are probably old. But Buckner would be the one that I'm ready to see, because I think Clemson could have benefited from having another guy that can consistently hit from beyond the arc. Chase, as good as he was down the stretch, he still struggled with some consistency behind the arc at times over the back half of the season. Because Joe Girard could have used some help there. It probably would have helped open more things up for him too. So if I had to go with one of those 3 high school recruits, give me Ace Buckner. I hadn't even mentioned the bloodline. Anybody old enough to remember those teams from the Rick Barnes era? Greg Buckner was that guy, man. He was that guy. He was one of the best basketball players I've ever seen come through Clemson. What have you heard about Clemson and FSU possible in Big Ten within the next year? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. In order for Clemson and Florida State to play in the Big Ten or any other league in 2025, the paperwork for that already had to be filed. So I think it was sometime last summer that paperwork had to be filed. So I do not, the earliest would be 2026. And that paperwork's got to be filed by summer of this year. So many sites say you got to get out before June 30th, as the three others join in the leading the voting power. Yeah, June 30th. I don't know what the end of that means, but June 30th is sometime in the summer. June 30th might be the date, but you got to file that paperwork. There's a deadline, and for Clemson or any other ACC school to have been eligible to play in the Big Ten or the SEC or even the Big 12 in 2025, that paperwork already had to be in. Wish Clemson had went to the SEC. Yeah, I don't know that it's decided where Clemson's going to go yet, man. I warned people this morning to be very careful about what you believed on social media today. Just keep in mind what day it is today. It is April the 1st, April Fool's Day. There is a lot of BS floating around out there on Twitter and Facebook today. So just be mindful of that. Bryce Davis predicted to go to Georgia. Do we have a second guy in mind to pair with Ari? I would not call Bryce Davis's recruitment over by any stretch. I'm not saying he doesn't end up at Georgia, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion just yet. I don't know who's predicting him to go there. I haven't seen any of the crystal balls predicting him to go there. Matter of fact, I can look that up right this second. No crystal ball predictions made for Bryce Davis yet. His is a recruitment that I think is going to carry out into the summer and go through officials. So you're going to get one more swing at him. Not sure I call Clemson the favorite, but I had a long conversation with Isaiah Campbell the other night, the Clemson commit, who the first few times that I talked to him, he led me to believe that they were probably looking at him to play defensive tackle. Well, he told me in this last conversation he's coming in to play end. So there would be your second guy to pair with Ari Watford right there. I know they've got Campbell listed as a defensive lineman, but he flat out told me the other night he was coming in to play defensive end. So there's two defensive ends on the board already for Clemson, which I knew that they kind of viewed him as a guy that could play inside or outside. But as of right now, the plan is to play him outside. So you got two right now. Other than that, they've been pretty slow to expand the board with defensive ends. I think they're going to be 100% certain about what Bryce Davis does before they start moving on to a bunch of other guys. If they would have shot threes instead of going for two every time, Alabama's shooting threes. See, this is kind of what I mean when you damned if you do, damned if you don't, because Clemson starts shooting threes and people's killing them for getting three happy and not feeding the ball inside. And then when they try to play inside out, you got the other half of the fan base killing them for not taking enough threes. Not saying you're killing them. That's not what I mean. I'm just speaking in general. But, when those two teams played back in December, it was the inside-out game that's how Clemson beat them. Joe Girard had a pretty good night from outside, and Joe Girard was pretty good from the outside in the second half the other night. But sometimes it's just not your night. And I know that Alabama had some good looks at some threes, but they also made a bunch of contested shots that night too. It's not like they were just sitting there throwing in one wide open three after another. Like I said earlier, it didn't matter what they did. Alabama had an answer, and the biggest thing was the shot making. They started 1 for 8 in that game, 1 for 8, and ended up. I think they were like 10 or 15 at one point in the second half, which is just lights out. It's hard to keep up with that, especially when you're not really known for your 3-point prowess. Spring game will be streamed on ACC Network Extra. Tickle Tiger says he's looking for Sammy Brown and the other running back. See, I already halfway know what to expect with Sammy. The one practice I got to watch him, man, I got to watch this spring. I spent a lot of time watching Sammy that day. I got a pretty good idea what to expect from him. I do think I am interested. I am kind of anxious to see what you get out of David Ajamame and see where he is after one spring, because it sounds like Keith Adams is pretty entrenched in that second spot behind Phil Maffa, which gives you two big bruising backs, man, that can run inside or outside, break tackles, and just still think if you can keep Jay Haynes healthy, you'll probably see a good little dose of him as a change of pace guy. But it'll be interesting to see where Ajamame kind of falls into pecking order. I've heard some good things about Jarvis Green this spring too. Eric wants to see, he's with me. He wants to see Cade being more comfortable under pressure, find the guys open down the field. That's what I want to see. Comfort level. Comfort level. Sarian says he wants to see all this improved decision making from Cade and to see Vizina is a solid backup. Yeah, it'll be good to see where Vizina is too. That's another good one. A lot of positive, there's a lot of positives coming out about him this spring too. So you like to see it with your own eyes. Absolutely, 100%. Thought Garrett Riley kind of did a pretty good job of describing what they've seen so far this spring. Is Chris pushing Klubnik for the starting spot? No. Has he been good enough to push him from a competition standpoint where they're out there competing with each other and trying to make each other better? It sounds like he has. And that would be a big jump from where he was this time last year. Offensive line. See, now that would be a good one. It'll depend on how they have them split up, right? Since they got the split rosters and everything. If you've got all the starters or pretty much all the starters on one team, then maybe you got something and there's something to see. But if you got 2 starters on one team and 3 on the other, I just don't know how much there is to take away from it. Maybe you can glean something about the mentality and the physicality and those kind of things. But if they're split up in a way where the 5 starters aren't together, then it's hard to get a good idea about cohesiveness. John says he wants to see Wesco Vizina defensive end depth. AJ Hoffler defensive end, that's one I want to see. I think he's a guy that can help a lot this year. It's too bad that Darian Mayo couldn't enroll early, because I think he could have got some opportunities. But I think Hoffler's a guy that's poised to take a a big jump in his second year. Does anybody know if we recruited DJ Burns out of high school? Let me tell you something about DJ Burns. That guy, you think he looks big on TV? I'm gonna tell you, man, TV don't do that boy no justice. That is a mountain of a man. And no, Clemson was not in on that on his recruitment coming out of high school. Apparently, there's some article by Pete Thamel on ESPN about Clemson and Florida State joining the Big Ten. I am on the front page of ESPN right now, and I don't see any. I don't see it. Again, the paperwork to leave the ACC and play in another conference for 2025 had to be in by last summer. So I don't see how they're playing anywhere else but earlier in 2026. Let's see. I'm scrolling Pete Thamel's page right now, and I don't see anything about that today. Nothing but basketball stuff. So it's probably April Fool's stuff. Being Middlebrooks, yeah, it would have been nice to be able to keep him this year. Absolutely, 100%. But if you listen to what's said, he left for the opportunity at more minutes because he was worried he wasn't going to get enough behind PJ. If had he stayed, he probably would have gotten all the minutes he wanted and then some. The way PJ ended up in foul trouble a lot of the times, but you can't keep them all, man. I don't know how much, and sometimes you don't know how much money factors into it. And then when you don't have an unlimited amount of resources, you got to decide what you think this guy's worth or how much money he's worth spending on. You don't want to overspend on a guy isn't going to start and then not have enough to go say, let's get Joe Girard out of the portal. And so it's a fine line you got to walk, man. But yeah, in a perfect world, it'd have been great to have Ben Middlebrooks still at Clemson this year. He's been really good there at North Carolina State. He's been a big part of this run they've been on going back to the ACC tournament. And he'd have had a lot of opportunities, man, seeing the way PJ spent a lot of the season in foul trouble. Do you think anyone is at high risk of transferring out of basketball? Absolutely. 100%. I'm not going to start throwing names around, but I think they're going to lose at least one guy, and it could be two, maybe even three. All right, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, the expansion, because there's nothing new to talk about. There is ESPN has not officially declined the option. That's like the third time I've seen that today. I can't find anything that where it's that's being reported. There might be people speculating that's what's going to happen, and I can see it playing out that way. If I'm not mistaken, that decision's got to be made by the first of the year 2026. So they still got some time. But there's nothing official on that front yet. And not picking up, I don't know. Let's say ESPN doesn't pick up the television the rights from 2027 to 2036. I don't know how that affects the grant of rights because again, they're two different things. People think they're the same thing. They're not. They're kind of tied together, but they are still two different things. So I don't know how that would affect that one way or the other. First spring game I'm going to make since I was really young. Anything you suggest I do with my little girl? She is almost 4. That Cade, bro, you too young to have a 4-year-old girl, bro. Come on now. And I could have swore I saw you at the spring game last year. I could have swore I saw you. You were wearing number 2 on the field. No, in all seriousness, I'm not sure what kind of events and stuff they have going on this weekend. I'm sure they'll have some stuff for kids to do Saturday. If I'm remembering right, they usually do on the day of the spring game. But I would suggest it kind of depends on what she likes. Too bad there's no baseball at home this weekend, but I would suggest a trip downtown. Trying to think about what I used to do with some of my girls when they were that age, and I'm coming up blank. It it kind of just depends on what she likes, man. And my kids are all grown. I'm not sure what there is around Clemson now that's targeted towards younger kids. I'm probably not the best person to ask. Let's put it that way. But I would definitely at least spend some time downtown. David Sanders and Jordan Young. I still say the same thing I said last week or whenever it was. I fully expect both of these guys to take it into the summer, especially Sanders. Now, would I be shocked if Jordan Young suddenly decided to shut it down? No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't outright surprise me at all. But as we sit here today, April 1st, and no, this is not an April Fool's joke. I fully expect those guys to go follow through with their officials. Maybe I'd have to go back and look at Jordan's and see where his and when and where his are scheduled for. But I really do think Sanders is going to take all of his. He was up at Ohio State this weekend for unofficial. I don't think they've got a great shot of really getting realistically in this thing. I don't think he wants to be that far away from home. And if you're Clemson, you got to feel really good about where you're at heading into these last rounds of visits. You know, he You're not going to get Mason Short, but I don't think those two guys are tied together by any stretch. I know there's been talk publicly of the two playing together, and it could very well end up playing out that way. But I don't think that if it ends up that way, it'll be more of a coincidence and those kind of things, not because they made it a priority to play together. I think Clemson's probably the favorite as we sit here today. How much of a favorite, I don't know. I think and I think most of that is due to the hiring of Matt Luke, because if he's not hired, I'm not sure Clemson's even in it at this point. I'm not sure you even have him on campus for the elite retreat back in January. And you've got him back here a couple times since then. He visited twice in the span of a few days during the spring. I don't know if you saw my interview I did with Gideon Davidson a few weeks ago. He feels really good about Clemson's chances at landing Davis Sanders, and I've talked to at least a couple of different recruits, and I've asked them about Sanders and Mason Short, and both times I got the same answer. Mason is a guy that mostly kept to himself. He didn't. He wasn't as. I'm not sure. I don't want to use the wrong word here. He was more focused on practice than he was, socializing and stuff. I'm not saying Sanders wasn't focused on practice, but because he was, but it was like the way it was described to me was like Short was kind of laser focused, man, and everything. It's like his surroundings. There was nobody there, because that's how dialed in he was on practice. But again, you're not going to get Short. He's going to end up at Georgia, but kind of started to ramble here, hadn't I? Let's just say I really like where Clemson sits with Davis Sanders. I'm not a betting man. If somebody forced me to lay money on a school today where I think he's going to end up, I would probably put that money on Clemson, and I would absolutely call Clemson the favorite for Jordan Young. But again, I do think both are. I don't think either are close to shutting it down. I think they're going to take more vids. And as we see here today, I think they're both going to follow through and take all of their officials. And speaking of betting, if you are one of those guys that likes to, do a little wagering from time to time, check this out.
If you are looking to place your bet for March Madness, the NBA, NHL, MLB, college football, or any other sporting events, go to BetOnline AG and enter the code ACTTV for a 50% welcome bonus up to $1,000. With the earliest lines, biggest bets and fastest payouts, BetOnline AG is the place to go. Don't forget to use the code ACTTV.
BetOnline.ag, use the code ACCTV. And if you have not hit that subscribe button, we ask you to please do that. Like the videos, share them around. We would very much appreciate it. Sometimes you play good and still lose, but not guarding the three-point line will hurt you. Several of their losses came from not guarding the three-point line. I think it's erroneous to say Clemson didn't guard the three-point line against Alabama, because they did. I just think Alabama's ball movement was so good, and they used the screens so well, and they also used penetration to set up some of those open looks from the corner, particularly in the first half. It's not that Clemson wasn't guarding the three-point line. It's that Alabama just played that well and was able to overcome what Clemson was doing defensively. Even when Clemson tried to go to a zone to try to stop some of that penetration after PJ got in foul trouble, They weren't just giving them the 3-point line. I don't think it's fair to say they weren't guarding the 3-point line, even in we can go back to during the season. I don't think it's fair to say they weren't guarding the 3-point line. Sometimes you just get beat. I don't know if Tyler Brown's going to play in the spring game. He was supposed to be held out of the first part of the spring, and maybe he gets back by the end of the spring. I'd be surprised if he plays. We'll see. I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying I'll be surprised. I don't think there's any reason to risk getting him injured out there. You know what he can do, and I don't know if it's worth the risk. I could be wrong, but I'll be surprised. I don't know the status of Jay Haynes either. We get Dabo Wednesday before the spring game. I'll try to remember to ask him about that because I've been curious about that myself because I know he was banged up at the start of spring practice, and I have not heard his name mentioned since. When they talked about the running backs after the scrimmage the other day, it was Keith Adams and Jarvis Green. Didn't hear Jay Haynes' name mentioned, so we'll see if I can find that out Wednesday. Do you see Gideon Davison coming in next season and being a running back one immediately? I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. I think he's got that kind of potential. Running back's a hard position to learn, though. Ajamame is going to have a year on him. Keith Adams will still be here. And guys like Jarvis Green and Jay Haynes, who have been in the system for a couple years, it might be more of a committee type deal when he first gets here because there's so much that goes into playing running back, particularly with the pass protections and stuff. But that's a bright guy, man. You can tell if you just have a couple conversations with him. He's extremely bright. His football IQ seems like it's off the chart. So I could absolutely see him being one of those guys that come in here and just soak it up and he doesn't hit one of those mental roadblocks that a lot of freshmen tend to hit in their first spring. But it'll be hard for him to come in and be the day one starter because it's not like you're devoid of any talent. And, we've heard Dabo Swinney say it before. If you're coming in trying to knock out the incumbent, it's got to be a knockout punch. Not that there's going to be an incumbent next year because Phil Moff will have been moved on, but you kind of get my drift. Thought the difference versus Alabama was Jack Clark only had 4 rebounds. Yeah, I thought Clemson did not do a good job of rebounding in that game. They got better in the second half. They got out rebounded on the offensive glass by a mile in the first half, and they kind of evened it up in the second half. But, I don't think Jack Clark was terribly defensively, but I've seen him better. I've seen him play better. But rebounding's been an issue at times for the entire team outside of Ian Shefflin. Jack Clark's probably been the second most consistent, and it's been getting those guards to crash the board. It's kind of been a hurdle Brownell's been trying to cross all season. He's talked about it multiple times. Asia Thomas. He's some of that might depend on what Brownell does in the portal, but I could see him carving out a role for himself next year. Does he win a starting job? I don't know, but I could see him, maybe working himself into the rotation. I'm trying to remember. I think he's about 6'7", 6'8". I don't know what he's done in the weight room, this year. But that kid's got some talent, man. He was another top 250 guy coming out of high school. Kind of a stretch and in the same mold of a Hunter Tyson. And Brownell's been really good about developing guys at that spot on the floor. So we'll see where he is. Yes, they have to make the decision on the television deal by early next year. I can't remember the exact date. And are you talking about the February? You talking about? Yeah, they have to make the decision on the television option early next year sometime. I think it is. And if you want to get out in time for the 2026 season, you got to have that paperwork in sometime in this summer, if I'm not mistaken. No, JP does not say go to SO. That is one I would tell you to pass on. I've not been very impressed with SO the last few times I've been. If you're a big barbecue person, I kind of enjoy Heavenly Hogs over in Seneca. I've been to walk-ons a couple times. It's all right. But I have not been a big fan of the SO Club here of late. I have no idea what my dogs are barking at out there. Yes, sir. I'll be at the spring game. 100%. I'll be up. I'm heading up Wednesday, matter of fact, I think, anyways. And I'll be up there through the weekend. I shall be on. We're going to do a pregame show from somewhere Saturday. We'll provide the details for that at a later date. There's no Paul talk this week because we're going to do a pregame show Saturday, and we might do a postgame show. I'm not sure yet, but we'll get the details out on that later in the week. But yeah, I'll be over there on the south side in the press box Saturday, but I'll absolutely be around. Yeah, my kids used to love the face paint. That's a good one. See, my kids are grown, man. It's hard for me to remember what we did when I took them. They didn't do a whole lot of. We were never big on tailgating and that kind of stuff. We would usually drive in, go to the game, and then leave. And I used to stop them by the park there where the waterfalls are in downtown Greenville on the way out sometimes. And they're again, I'm probably not the best person to ask. Why would they leave? Who we talking about? And I'll answer that. best that I can, anyways. Hardy Watts, one of Clemson's new offensive line offers. I don't know a ton about him yet. He's from up there in Massachusetts. I've tried to reach out to him, but I hadn't heard back from him. 6'6". He's probably pushing the 300-pound mark. Just Clemson wants to get bigger up front. That's been one of Matt Luke's priorities, and this offers more evidence of that. But we'll see if they can get him here for an official visit. I would be surprised if he doesn't come. Clemson deciding to pull the trigger and offer him puts them squarely in the mix. I'm not going to go as far as saying they're the favorite, and he is done and over with. But I do think he's, based on somebody I talked to over the weekend, I do think he's kind of like a good culture fit from that kind of standpoint. And the Clemson offers one he's been waiting on or hoping for. Hopefully I can get in touch with him one day this week. I've not had any luck doing that just yet. Can you talk about the Keep ACC Together lawsuit against FSU by the 5 AC schools? Will that affect Clemson's effort to leave? Look, there are going to be some schools in the ACC that will do whatever they can to try and keep it together, because they're not going to have a landing spot in this new landscape that we are witnessing the birth of right before our very eyes. There's only a few choice schools in the ACC that are going to have spots in the SEC or Big Ten. The rest are either going to have to, I don't know what they're going to have to do. Some of them might end up in the Big 12, but the money difference is going to be huge. It's the difference between today's Power 5 and G5. I think that the ACC is already on the verge of being a bona fide Group of 5 conference. The revenue disparity or the revenue gap's fixing to be that wide. But I don't think anybody's going to have any success keeping Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and maybe one or two more from leaving. I don't think there's anything that can be done. I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. I think there are things that in that television deal that ESPN absolutely 100% does not want coming out in public, and I think there'll end up being a settlement worked out. To me, it's just a matter of how much it's going to cost them to get out. Beadle and Hemingway. I'm not sure. Hemingway could probably get another year if he wants it. And from my understanding, it's a possibility he's back. Beadle, on the other hand, I could absolutely see him being one of the guy that is not back next year. How many minutes did he play in the tournament? Very few. There were some games. I'm not even. Did he play any? No, I know they relied on him some during the season, but once we got into the tournament, I don't remember seeing him any. Maybe he played a minute or two here and there, but and he's a guy that Brownell's been asked about a couple of times this year, and you see his talent level on the court, man. He can help you. I mean, he's got game. He's good, particularly on the offensive end of the floor. But if you listen to Brownell, he don't bring it every day in practice. And if you're not committed in practice, you're not going to play for Brad Brownell, man. It's as simple as that. I could absolutely see Beetle exploring other opportunities. Wonder if Blake Hebert will recruit Watts hard. If Hebert's kind of been like Gideon Davidson. They've tried to help recruit some of these offensive linemen. I imagine if they decide that's the guy they really, really want, yeah, you'll probably see Hebert and Gideon working on him some. Again, he's not said one way or the other whether he's planning to come back for the big official visit weekend. And if he does, I think that's a pretty good indicator right there. If he doesn't, then, once again, don't forget, if you have not hit that subscribe button, please do so, man. I know a lot of you that tune in every week have already subscribed. Hit that button. But if you haven't, if you're new here this week, please hit that thing for us, man. Click on that bell. Remind you we're here every Monday night. Don't forget, no Paul Talk this week. We're going to do, the plan is to do a pregame show from the stadium. I think it's pregame. We're planning on doing a show from the stadium. Let's put it that way. Pretty sure he said pregame anyway. So we'll release details on that later in the week. Don't forget, visit the site, allclemsontigers.com. Got a big update coming tomorrow on a priority target. So that'll be out in the morning. Talk to him today. And if you like to wager, man, betonline.ag. We got a code you can use, a promo code ACCTV, 50% off. Be on the lookout for the details for the spring game show. We're planning on doing it from the stadium. I just don't know what time yet. We'll put that out later in the week. And, of course, we'll be right back here next Monday. We'll recap the spring game, talk about everything we saw, I saw, you saw, touch on some baseball. Clemson heads to Notre Dame, and anything else we can dive into, man. Appreciate everybody that tuned in, and I'll see y'all next Monday.